Okay.
Okay. So welcome to our third NOHBA webinar of 2022. The Success Series. We're trying to provide very specific information that is useful for the indie brand world. And just a couple of quick notes. NOHBA, which is the Natural and Organic Health and Beauty Alliance, is it's NOHBA, NOHBA.org online. We have lowered all of our costs for being members. I had fought for that early on and the board didn't agree with me, but now they do. Haha. So I think it's $150 a year, and for like students and baby brands, I think it's 50. Katie, is that correct?
Katie? If it's your first year as a company, or if you're a new brand, then it's 50.
Okay. So I would encourage everybody to check that out. Also, Janelle just posted in the chat the link to the explanation on the flavor and or fragrance and flavor right to know act that we were talking before we got rolling. It's a new requirement in the state of California. I'm still not really sure that everybody has to register with that. A lot of things in law have to do with enforcement. In the state of California, we have a lot of laws that are what they call reactive rather than proactive. There's not anybody who there's not a sheriff, but if somebody is cranky and they report you, you might get a letter from the Department of Health saying, can you please comply with this law? And all you have to do is be polite and they won't have a real issue with you. So keep that in mind. It's something you can kind of do as required. So today's webinar is about really how you have the conversation with a chemist, with a private label lab or contract manufacturer, and with anybody you're working with, so that everybody is on the same page in terms of vocabulary. Really, this is a big problem as we have more and more people come into this industry who maybe don't have an experience with the industry, because we have all of our secret codes. And Aubri will talk about that. So I'm going to just read their bios a little. I apologize, but you know, sometimes you just got to read stuff. So Aubri Thomas is, wave Aubri, so we know who you are. There she is a cosmetic chemist and sustainability expert based in Oakland, California, and she's the founder of refillable skincare company, The Rebrand. She's a formulator of award-winning clean beauty brands. I've known Aubri for probably four or 5 years now, huh? And she's a wonderful chemist. Aubri has established herself as the forefront of sustainable beauty product development. She holds a BS in chemistry and a master's in chemical engineering and product development from University of California, Berkeley. The Rebrand, her company, is a skincare company on a mission to make refillable beauty the norm. Founded by cosmetic chemists, The Rebrand makes high performance clean skincare and refillable packaging. And then she said, we're the only beauty company offering refills both online and in refill shops. So it's a really interesting kind of niche that I think is just brilliant. Our first, and she'll be the second speaker. Our first speaker is Robyn Watkins, who many of you probably know. And Robyn's bio is, she's an award-winning beauty product. Oh, Robyn, you have to wave. There she is. Okay. Is an award-winning beauty product development expert and founder of Holistic Beauty Group, leading consultancy specializing in mindful product development for disruptive beauty and wellness brands. It's something kind of in demand. I think there's a D that got cut off there. Industry thought leader, Robyn has been at the forefront of clean and conscious beauty and was recently named behind the scenes beauty icon by Birdie magazine. Having worked for a number of years on both sides of the industry, indie and big box beauty, Robyn could see the gaps and connected the dots, providing full service external product development and open transparency and integrity. She leads a highly diverse all-female product development agency, yay, all female, launching award-winning innovations that consciously align with the missions and core values of their clientele. Robyn was raised with a holistic upbringing and forming worldview to rely on the intelligence and healing found in nature. About her company, it was born in 2018 in Claremont, California. Holistic Beauty Group merges mission alignment style development with technical product expertise to deliver unresonating products. Conscious and clean product development consultancy servicing leading and emerging brands from concept to consumer. So
thank you.
guys. Woo.
That was a mouthful.
I'm gonna mute myself now, and Robyn, I'm gonna ask you to put up your presentation and take it away.
Okay, so thank you everyone for joining us today on this presentation. Thank you, Gabe, for having me. I absolutely have really appreciated our partnership over the years and just your mentorship, and looking forward to discussing. So let me just get my screen up. Okay. View. How does that look for everybody? Good. Okay. So today I'm going to cover off aligning your ingredient policy to your mission, how to communicate your policy, and I'm going to cover off the product development brief, which is the essential piece of documentation to really make sure that your development goes off smoothly and seamlessly. So the first thing, if you know me or if you've ever worked with me, one of the things that I always say is, what square are you standing on in terms of your ingredient policy? It really should align to your brand's mission. So that way you can continue to evolve and be authentic to what your brand stands for. So really starting with the why is really, you know, it may sound cliche, but starting with the why is very important because, for example, if you are a, SPF beach brand, okay, you're going to want to make sure that the products that you make have a certain amount of respect for the ocean and the marine life, right? Because it's aligning to your brand's mission. And so really understanding what you're after from a mission perspective is really important. And that's where we start as we start thinking about an ingredient policy. And then we think about the impact. What is the impact that your product, your finished product, is going to make on the world, on the planet, on people, on people's lives? And so I want to offer that perspective because it's not enough anymore to just start off with what is your retailer ingredient policy comprised of, right? Because the retailers are also evolving and finding their squares to stand on. And so it's not enough just to say you're Sephora clean. You really have to know what your brand's mission is and making sure that the policy aligns to that first. So the ingredient policy building blocks, what I want to offer today is when we work on ingredient policy development for our brands at Holistic Beauty Group, we always start with like, okay, what are the issues that we want to tackle within our policy? What is it that you're passionate about? And then we layer that in with some of the things that we have to consider. So first off, human safety. So if we want to read this, left to right, human safety is the issue. So from a policy perspective, we want to make sure that we're formulating without CMRs. And those are carcinogens, mutagens, and reproductive toxins. And as long as you are, working with a toxicologist, formulating to the EU standard, you should be avoiding these, but it's something that we should consider. Regulatory. We want to make sure that your products are market compliant to the markets that you want to sell in. So not just the US, the EU, the UK, Asia Pacific, where are you in the world? That's where you want to make sure that your formulations align to that. So this should also be included as a part of your policy. I mentioned retailer compliance. You want to be retail ready. So obviously you want to make sure if you want to be in Folian, for example, that you are considering the ingredient policy and making sure that you're compliant if that's your dream retailer. Transparency, so making sure that claims are exactly where they need to be. public relations. This is something that I fought a lot with in my corporate experience. There is a lot of science that maybe some ingredients aren't as shouldn't be as vilified as they are. But guess what? Is that something that you really want to fight with the consumer about? You have to pick and choose your battles. So from a public relations standpoint, it's really good to understand what's on that hot list. What ingredients are hot, what ingredients are, there's a lot of debate around. And if you talk to a regulatory compliant agents, they'll tell you, for example, arbutin is up at the EU Commission right now. Kojic acid is banned in certain markets. So these are things that are allowed here, but maybe we should add on our ingredient policy if you want to avoid, the public scrutiny. Social welfare, so looking at issues like fair trade and how things are consciously sourced, environmental toxicity, this relates to biodegradability, and not just that, but all the way down to plant toxicity, right? So we want to make sure when things do biodegrade that the soil is good enough to actually grow plant life. So we want to make sure that we do our homework there, and that we make sure that if we are looking at ingredients that are biodegradable, that we fully understand how it does biodegrade and how it impacts the planet. So outside of that, sustainability, right? So sustainability, we want to look at things like RSPO. We were just talking about that earlier, sustainable sourced items, upcycled materials. We want to make sure we're avoiding endangered species. There's a lot of exotic, fun marketing plants out there that people want to talk about. Aloe furrow, for example, which is a species of aloe, is actually an endangered species and something that should not be used in product development. Animal welfare, so as it relates to vegan and cruelty-free, so you want to add that to your policy. Integrity and making sure that whoever your customer is, that you're considering that on your policy. So for example, if you are a maternity brand and you're marketing to pregnant and lactating women, we should make sure that we're avoiding certain, retinoids and things like that. That shouldn't really go into those formulas for that consumer. So your policy should also be your target. It should also reflect the needs of your target customer as well. And that includes, children, people with sensitive skin. And as you're working through your policy, sorry, was there a question? Okay, so as we're working through the policy, who's on your team? Who's vetting it with you? Who's reviewing it with you? These are some things that I can offer, some people that you can put in place around you and surround you to make sure that your policy is legitimate. So putting together a scientific advisory board would be worthwhile. You may want to talk to a toxicologist and have them review your policy. Here at Holistic Beauty Group, we work with 2 toxicologists, and we love that. We love having their opinion as it relates to the formulations that we are working on with our chemists. A regulatory agent, I mentioned that several times. This is super important, making sure not only you're going to be compliant and that you're going to be set up for success in your formula journey, but also you're looking ahead, that you are well equipped with what's going to happen in the future as it relates to new and emerging ingredients. Okay, and then also trusted formulators, ingredient suppliers, people like Gay, people like Aubri. Hey, I'm thinking about taking phenoxyethanol off of my adding it to my prohibited ingredient list. What do you think? What are the ramifications of that? What are some swaps for that? It's really good to have those conversations before you enforce a policy. The other piece is health and wellness professionals, doctors, practitioners. These are folks that, if you're a brand that's, for example, a dermatologist brand or some sort of a wellness brand, and you have holistic practitioners and a part of your scientific advisory board, maybe they should take a look at your policy as well. They may have a point of view. And then lastly, just a really like trusted authority in your space to really vet your policy. And that's important because again, once you do this, it's something that you're going to start, you know, communicating around, and you want to make sure that it's solid and it's also feasible to your products and your consumers. So as we talk about then putting the policy together, we talked a little bit about the issues that you want to look at in your policy and how you can consider that. Here are the sections to include in your ingredient policy. So you want to make sure there's a statement of intention. Hey, this policy is made because of XYZ. This is our mission. These are our values. We want to make sure that the products that we're making align to this. You want to outline your ingredient policy pillars for your brand. It could be all about, you know, animal safety and animal cruelty. So it's super vegan, and you know, you're, or maybe it's like some sort of social cause, right? And so everything that you're doing here should again go back to your brand's mission. There's no right or wrong, I'll say that. And there's a lot of, you know, confusion and talk about clean beauty. What does it mean? How is it defined? There is the safety aspect, but then there's the values aspect. The values aspect is what we're talking about as well. All right, so you want to include your high-level free-up list. This is so important because these are the things that most likely will get marketed, and these are the things you want to really make sure are not in your formula. So if it's parabens, phthalates, you know, if you want to stay away from ethoxylates or anything in that particular, you want to make sure that that's upfront and very clear on your policy. You want to have the market regions that you are selling to, the retailers that you're going to be selling to, and any brand guidance on gray areas. We were talking a little bit about these new California acts that are coming out, Prop 65. You want to have a stance on that. You want to have a point of view on fragrance. Are you okay with synthetic fragrance or not? Are you okay with natural fragrance or not? Are you okay with essential oils, or are you just using hydrosols, or are you doing scented botanicals? What, you know, where are you in that spectrum? And that's very important to put on your policy. I also would recommend a preservative positive list. We often say the preservatives we don't want. Well, then what are the preservatives that are okay for your brand? This will be super helpful for your supply chain, your formula, development team, just to make sure that everybody's on the same page. And then lastly, just that A to Z list, that prohibited ingredient list, like all the things that you absolutely are hard-nosed, both direct and indirect in the formula, are really crucial here. So as I go forward, just the policy communication. Once you have your policy together, what do you do with it? So the first thing that you want to do is make sure that your laboratories and your formulation chemists have this policy. Make sure that they're clear, walk them through it, answer questions, have a dialogue. Don't just email it, pick up the phone and say, hey, I have a new ingredient policy. I'd like to walk you through it, and make sure that we're aligned and on the same page. You want to make sure that your contract manufacturers also have this as well. They're going to be the ones often buying your ingredients and raw materials, and so they need to be very conscious of your policy as well and sign off on it as well. The ingredient supplier should have it. So for example, I might be sourcing something as simple as a tremella mushroom, and there's one version with phenoxyethanol and one without, one with butylene glycol and one with glycerin. So it's really important that they have your policy so they can offer you the right materials at the right time and not waste a lot of time. Okay, and then you also want to educate and arm your internal teams with your policy. So that's your internal product development team, your supply chain team, who's again buying and procuring ingredients, your marketing team, so they know how to talk about the ingredient policy and can be able to explain and communicate the square that your brand stands on. And then finally, external communication. So your full entire ingredient policy should not be on your website. It's really an internal document. However, there's aspects that you can, definitely market from a values perspective. This is what we believe in. This is how we're working with ingredients and how we source, etc. Okay, so now that we have that, I'm going to segue into the brief. So the product development brief is a separate document from your ingredient policy, but ingredient policy development is crucial that you do that first, because that will help inform not only the products that you're making, how you're making them, the key ingredients that you want to, call out, and again, the full mission of the actual product. So I wanted to offer you this checklist. And I do have to claim that I am a bit of product development, guru. I've trained many people on writing product development briefs. I'm very proud of the work that we do at Holistic Beauty Group. We write the best briefs in the industry, I believe. I've been told that. And our suppliers and our supply chain, they are very happy to work with us on projects because our briefs are tight. So these are the elements to a winning product development brief. And the first thing is your brand details. And so you want to make sure this is very straightforward stuff. But I think that it's helpful, especially if you haven't been in the industry and you don't know what to put on the brief. You don't want to be, redundant on your brief, but you want to make sure everything is solid. Having this all set up from the beginning will save you so much heartache, so much time, and it will get you better results and really a successful formula that you're really looking for. So the brand details, you want to make sure you have your brand name, the key contacts, the shipping address, the carrier information, a secondary contact person if you can't be reached, and the finished goods shipped to address. Okay, so that would be great to have on your brief. And then as we look into this column here, project details, your ship date. This is different than your launch date. The ship date is what the supply chain cares about. So whatever your launch date is, your ship date is usually 1 to 2 months prior. So if you are a September fall launch, then we're shipping in July or August. So your formula approval date, you want to make sure you have a date. Saying ASAP is not a date. I'll just say that again. ASAP is not a date. As soon as possible is not a date. Give a date. If you don't have dates on your briefs, no supplier or manufacturer or formulating chemist is going to take you serious. So target formula fill and assembly costs. This is important. How much do you want to pay for the formula? Again, you have to have something here to guardrail you to make sure that everything is working in your favor. You want to have your package direction. Are you going to have a glass bottle with a pump? Are you going to do, an airless bottle with an airless pump? What are you doing? Your target fill weights. So this is the amount of bulk that you want in your formula. It's really important that you set that up from the beginning because that's going to inform your cost. So the positioning, are you luxury, prestige? Are you mass? Are you, a professional brand? This is important for the chemist to know. Your launch quantities, annual estimated volumes, markets of sale, retailer policies, your concept, the number of SKUs, the product benefits, and target consumer. That's all your project detail work, okay? And then as you go into the formula detail, you want to talk about, you want to have your working name, you want to have a texture, a color benchmark if you have one. So you may like one product for a texture, you might like another product for just the color or something like that. It's helpful to add to your brief. You want to outline the texture descriptions here. So do you want a water break? Do you want more of a buttery feel? Do you want something that's emollient? These are all the things that you want to do here. You want to describe the textures and bring it all to life. You want to talk about the scent direction, the color direction, the payoff direction. The payoff is like, okay, if you want it to be translucent, opaque, if you want it to be shimmery or matte, that type of thing, you want to talk about that on your brief. And you want to also outline any claims that you're after and any key ingredient platforms that you're after as well. And any, again, application and usage instructions are super key here. And again, your packaging component. So this is the formula detail piece. And then I'll stop it with the post-approval details. And so this is at the end of the brief where I've laid out, about the brand, the product, the concept, the formula details. And then post approvals. So again, linking your ingredient policy, making sure that you highlight your prohibited ingredients that we just discussed. You want to offer a document checklist on your brief. So that way, whoever's working on your product, they know from the beginning that you're going to be requesting raw material CFAs, that you're going to be requesting non-animal testing statements. All that stuff I want you to put on your brief. And then any sort of sampling requirements, put it on your brief. If you're going to need 50 to test for marketing or a panel test, add it to your brief. Also, your safety and performance test plan, add that to your brief. So that should be, after the formula is complete, I'd like to do HRAPT, micro PET. We want to do heavy metal toxin testing. These are all the tests we want to do. So that way your chemist is ready to go when that formula is approved and knows that they have to order more raw materials to satisfy your safety requirements. So I know this is a lot, but I hope this is helpful, and I'm happy to share this with anybody who want to just contact me. I'm happy to share this out with you as well. Oops, sorry. Okay. And that is it. Again, here's our contact information. If you'd like to get a copy of this, or if you have any questions at all, this is our website. You can email us at hello@Holistic Beauty Group. I left our phone number, also our address, and our Instagram if you'd like to connect there. So thank you so much.
Thank you,
Thanks,
Robyn. Yeah, that
Thank
was
you.
great. So our next speaker is Aubri Thompson, and Aubri is going to kind of drill down right into some of the things that were presented on this. And Aubri, as I said earlier, has been a chemist and worked with some big brands. So she has a lot of experience with contract manufacturers. And as somebody who sells raw materials to contract manufacturers, sometimes I'm just amazed. That's all I gotta say. Okay, go for it, Aubri. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having me. And thank you so much, Robyn, for that amazing presentation. I hope everybody took a screenshot of that brief slide, because that's going to definitely come into play here in this presentation as you're thinking about working with a contract manufacturer. So as Gay said, I'm a cosmetic chemist. I focus a lot on sustainability, which is why I started my company, The Rebrand, and we do refillable skincare. But I've also formulated both in-house and as a consultant for many clean beauty brands, and have worked with a wide array of contract manufacturers. And as Gay said, yes, it can be very interesting. So I want to guide everybody through that today. So why work with a contract manufacturer would be the first question. We'll talk about the timelines and what the process actually looks like, and then how to find and vet that CM that you want to work with. And lastly, what it actually looks like to work together. So as you probably know, contract manufacturers are basically just big factories. They can scale up, they can create huge volumes of your product. Most of them also have R&D labs, so they can do formulation as well. The main reason why you want to work with a manufacturer is to be able to scale your business. So if you're a small brand and you've been making some stuff yourself in a smaller facility, maybe this is the way that you reach the volumes you want to reach. Or if you're just starting out and you know you don't want to have to do that yourself, you immediately want help from someone else to produce the products, this is the way to do it. They can also provide R&D and manufacturing expertise, and it can be attractive to retailers that you're already working with a manufacturer, because then they know that you'll be able to meet the volumes that they might need. Of course, there are also challenges. The first is that it is expensive. If you've been producing small quantities yourself, your cost of goods, or COGS, has just been made up of ingredients and packaging. And now you're going to need to add on this labor component and administrative component that is usually around $2 per unit, if not more. You could also end up with too much inventory. So keep in mind, most of your products are going to have a 2-year shelf life. You need to be able to sell through whatever is produced, or you're going to have to landfill units at the end, which is obviously horrible for your wallet and the environment. So make sure your projections are accurate and you'll actually be able to sell through the amount that you produce. Another issue is that these manufacturers don't care about what you care about. Some do, but for the most part, they are not as nuanced as you are on the issues of sustainability or cruelty-free or clean and organic, right? So you really have to advocate for yourself in that way. And then lastly is the lead times. You know, lead times are an issue already with packaging and ingredients, but now you're adding in communication with another party who can take some time to respond to emails and has other projects that they're working on as well. So when you take all of this into consideration and you decide, yes, this is the right move, I want to work with a contract manufacturer, you have two kind of main paths that you can go down. The first is a full contract manufacturer development. So this means you're going to rely on the CM for both the formulation and the scale up of a new product. This is typically less expensive because they will waive the R&D fees, knowing that they're going to make most of their money on the scale up. But there is less customization involved with this option because they may use a stock formula, they may limit the number of trials that you can have, and there is less formula ownership. Typically, they will own the formula and they may have a path to ownership whereby you produce a certain number of units and then you eventually get to own it. But from the beginning, they usually own it, which is kind of a big deal because if things go south, you cannot take that formula somewhere else to be produced. The second option is doing your own formulation and then transferring it to the CM, and this is called a tech transfer or technology transfer. And this means that you're going to hire a chemist, or maybe you even already have a formula that you've been producing yourself. You're just going to transfer that to the CM and they're just going to do the scale up. This is typically more expensive because you are paying a consultant or a new hire to do this work for you. And then you're going to still pay the CM to do the lab fee and the scale up. So it does add up, but you can usually get exactly what you want, especially if you're doing something very innovative and new, and you'll have full ownership of that formula. So you can take it somewhere else if things don't work out with that particular manufacturer. So as far as kind of the timeline on the process, once you start working with the CM, it looks kind of the same for both options. So you're going to first vet the CM, find the one that you want to work with. They'll be doing lab work, whether that is developing a new formula or just ensuring that they can recreate the formula that you're transferring to them. Then you'll place the purchase order or PO, and then they'll produce your product. Each of these smaller boxes is about a 2-month estimated window. So you can see with the full CM development, things can go a little bit more quickly. It usually takes about 10 months, I would say, from when you start the process to your ship date, as Robyn mentioned. The option with your own formulation, you're going to have a little bit more time up front when you're developing the formula, but once you hand it off, the section for lab work is smaller because again, they're just duplicating your formula, making sure they can make it. They don't need to do any R&D. So this is kind of an idea of what that process looks like, and now we'll walk through kind of each stage. So finding a manufacturer is really the hardest part of this whole process. If you've gone about it, you know, there's not really a good database. There are databases, but they just don't give you the right information. And truly the best way to find a manufacturer is to ask for recommendations, whether that's from a consultant, one of your ingredient suppliers, a friend in the beauty industry. This is really the best way to find people that are compatible and know what they're doing. You can also do a Google search, especially if you have location requirements. So if you want to say locally produced, then you need to be looking in a smaller radius. And also keep in mind that whoever produces your product, you are then going to have to pay to ship that product to your office or your warehouse. So that can really add up on shipping costs if you're very far away. The product type also should be included in this search because manufacturers will usually specialize in one product type. So if it's color cosmetics versus skincare and personal care versus powders, these are kind of different capabilities that you're going to want to make sure that your manufacturer has. And the next move is just to set up phone calls. Honestly, it kind of felt like when I was interviewing vendors for my wedding, this is just what you have to do. You have to just get on the phone. There will be a business development manager that will want to get on the phone with you, and you just set up a 30-minute phone call. And that's where you can really get into these nitty-gritty questions that are going to help you hone in on who you want to work with. So what products do you specialize in? Again, pretty important. What is your minimum order quantity, or MOQ? This is probably the most important question for a small brand to ask, and it will probably determine who you can work with. The average MOQ, I would say, is about 5,000 units. I have seen some manufacturers go down to 1,000, 2,000, but there are also some that are all the way up at 25,000, and they really just want to work with the L'Oreals and the P&Gs, and those aren't going to be the best fit for you as a small brand. What is your process for a tech transfer versus a development? If you've already decided which one you're going to do, you can ask about that one specifically. What is your current production schedule and capacity? If they're already booked out through the end of the year and you want it to launch by the end of the year, you know that that's not going to work out from the beginning. Do you have blank capability? If you're doing anything that's not liquid in a bottle, make sure they can do it. Things like molded products or using a new packaging material like bamboo. It's better to just ask up front and know they can handle it. Do you have a history of working with blank brands, whether that's organic or cruelty-free or whatever? They're obviously going to say yes to this, but how they respond can also tell you what their familiarity level really is. And then, is your facility certified to do blank? If you're doing an OTC product, that stands for over-the-counter drug, like a sunscreen or an acne product, they need to be certified. If you want to create a certified organic product, they need to be certified. So if you have any special things like that, make sure you ask on that intro call. So now you have your answers to those questions, and you can select 1 to 2 CMs to move forward with that product development brief that Robyn just did an amazing job explaining how to create. So this is going to include your ingredient policy, like she said, and really all the details of your project. I personally recommend, if you're doing a development with a CM, just to pick one, because you don't want to be keeping 2 CMs on the line for doing all this work for you in the R&D sense. If you're just transferring a formula, though, it can be beneficial to move forward with 2 so that you can then compare costs and actually do a little bit of negotiating. If that sounds like it's too much, you can just pick the one you like the best. But as you get more experience and you care more about cost, you can kind of see how they're going to quote you on the same formula. So now you've submitted your brief. They will now come back to you with formula samples. These will either be their work based on your brief or the formula that you've given them. You can go back and forth with them until you approve the samples and you're happy with them. At that point, they will give you a quote, and this will usually include the raw materials and the labor for them to make the product. Packaging is usually supplied by the brand. This can vary, and if you want to ask a manufacturer for a supplier, like a packaging supplier recommendation, they usually have people they like to work with, but for the most part, you're going to be supplying and sending that packaging to them. Then they'll move into pre-production tests. Like Robyn mentioned, you should have your stability and performance testing plan lined out. Sometimes they will want to be the ones to perform certain tests, and sometimes they will want you to do it. So that can vary as well, but you'll make sure that everything's going to go well for the actual production. And that's when you issue a purchase order. So it basically is just a piece of paper that says, like, I'm going to pay this much for you to make this for me. And that will kickstart production. So they will start ordering ingredients. They will hopefully get back to you with an estimated production date, and you can plan to be on site on that date. I personally do like to be on site just because something always goes wrong. And it's just nice to be in the next room so they can come and ask you, hey, is this okay? Is this within your specification? That kind of thing. So mark your calendar and see if you can be there in person. And then these are some of, throughout that whole process, these are some of the weird acronyms that you're going to hear, just so that you're armed and you can Google the full words. So CM, also known as a co-man or CMO, there are plenty of different terms, but that just means contract manufacturer. MOQ, minimum order quantity. SKU, or SKU, pronounced SKU, is a stock keeping unit. So this is each individual product type that you're going to sell. So if you're doing like say a body lotion, but there are 3 fragrances, that is 3 different SKUs. Or if you have a trial size and a full size, that's 2 different SKUs. RFQ is a request for quote. So this would just be the shorthand for you asking the manufacturer for a cost estimate. Cost of goods, COGS, PO is a purchase order. BOM is the bill of materials. This is just a list of all of the packaging components that you will need for the production. So it could be, 2,000 bottles or 2,000 2-ounce bottles, 2,000 caps, 2,000 labels. QIL is a quantitative ingredient list. That's just a fancy way of saying the formula. And then a spec is a specification sheet, and this will outline the technical physical properties of your product. So things like the pH, the color, the odor, the appearance, the viscosity, and you will be able to set a range on the specification so that if something falls outside of the range, you don't have to approve it, and it will be on the manufacturer to make it right because they did not meet the specification. So yeah, those get thrown around a lot and it can be very confusing. Lastly, just like some final takeaways, have a really clear idea of what is your responsibility and what is the manufacturer's responsibility. There are so many things that go into this. We've really just talked about the formula in this presentation, but packaging, artwork, regulatory, testing, these all need to get done. And it needs to be in your contract who is doing which portions of them. And then also just maintain good communication via phone and email. Typically, CMs are horrible at communication. And so they kind of sometimes can even appreciate if you are really on it and you even email them to follow up. So just make sure that everything's clean and tidy on your side of the street communication-wise. Thank you so much. Feel free to email me. I am not doing formulation projects right now, but I do hourly consulting, so could advise on things like working with a manufacturer. So feel free to email me or add me on LinkedIn.
Thank you, Aubri. I have a question, and I want to throw out questions as a whole, because any of you can answer this who work with contract manufacturers. As I talk to a lot of the CMs, and even some of the raw material people that we represent, since if you don't know me, we're a raw material distributor. So we sell primarily organic ingredients, but we sell some other things that aren't necessarily organic and they're manufactured. And so my question is, are you seeing a trend really towards smaller runs? Like, where before people would go, oh, I have to do 10,000 or 20,000. I think there's so many, the trend seems to be towards more smaller indie brands.
There is definitely the demand. Whether it's being met is a different question. I have seen some manufacturers accommodate by just charging a premium for smaller runs. And so that can be an option, but keep in mind, the smaller your run, you're not going to be getting those volume pricing, and that's going to be reflected in what the CM charges you.
On my end, I'm seeing suppliers actually go up in their MOQs in certain aspects because they want to weed out. There's been such an onboarding of so many indie brands that sometimes they put a year, sometimes 2 years of development into. They do place their pre-orders, their purchase orders, but then they don't come back for a reorder. So we're seeing that some of our supply chain is actually going up in terms of MOQ. And we do have like a set group of CMs that will do those smaller runs, and they've always have, and they probably always will, but I don't see a trend going smaller on the runs.
Okay. Yeah, I was curious because I have people who are, I don't know. We'll see. I think it's going to be really interesting with what's going on right now, because I think there was such a onslaught during COVID. God knows why. If you talk to a CM during, the last 2 years, they were just blowing out of their walls. I mean, we as a supplier certainly experienced that. So it'll be really interesting to see what happens now, I think, with inflation and how that affects demand. So anybody else, questions? Okie doke. Well then, I want to encourage you all to keep an eye on the next set of webinars. The fourth one that we'll do is going to be sort of a two-parter. One, we're going to have a guy who does natural and organic raw materials, and they're actives. They're just specifically active. So he's going to talk about developing that product line and making those products available. And what that means, those actives in term, I'm not an actives person. I deal with carrier oils. So that'll be interesting. And then we're going to spend the balance of that time putting together even more of a glossary and trying to wrangle words like clean and green, and talk about some of the references that might be standardized within the industry so that we're not confusing each other. I know there are a couple of people I see on Instagram and other places who are anti-clean beauty, which I still don't understand. But I think it depends on where you start to draw your lines. So I'd invite all of you to participate in that, because we need the opinions. We need to have a conversation in this industry as a whole, so we can start making some progress on that and push back a little bit, I think, on that whole anti-clean rhetoric, which just doesn't make sense. And I think a lot of it they seem to come just from safety. They don't ever talk about environmental impact or some of the other things that do involve wellness. So anybody else? Questions, thoughts? Thank you, ladies. We'll be in touch with everybody. If you don't get our newsletter and would like it, I think Katie put a link for the next webinar, and it'll be on Instagram and probably LinkedIn. And you can also write to us at sales@ooorganic.com, and we'll get that to the NOHBA side of things, which is the nonprofit we participate in. So thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Everybody.
Thanks,
Have a
everyone.
wonderful weekend, and I'll see you in Paris.